Welcome back to Powerhouse. Today I'm sitting down with Patty Arvielo, CEO and co-founder of New American Funding. Patty's impact isn't measured by headlines. It's measured by the people she's helped move closer to homeownership, especially in communities the industry has too often overlooked. We talk about her origin story, what shaped her drive, and when this work became more than a career. We also talk about what it really takes to build an infrastructure around programs built to serve underserved communities. And we dig into the hard stuff, holding the line on people over profits during margin pressure, leading individuals at scale, and the decisions that made the company stronger through the toughest years. If you're a loan officer, team leader, or executive trying to build something that lasts and actually matters, you're going to get a lot out of this one. Patty, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So you and I have met briefly, but we've never really spoken. And I wanted to take the opportunity in this conversation, to just have a conversation, get to know you, pick your brain, kind of understand what makes you tick, because you're a seminal figure in the industry. I have folks that I worked with at a previous mortgage company that now work at NAF, and they got nothing but the best things to say about you. So I'm genuinely curious about, what motivates you and why. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good. Shoot.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Well, we'll dive in. I'm always interested in people's origin stories in this industry. I've met people who either cross industry wise or inherited their place in the industry because of a family legacy of sorts. But the majority of the people in the industry, from my perspective, that really seem to be making a difference where it counts, they really sort of stumble into the industry almost by chance. And I know that you've told this story 1,000 times, but I'm asking if you could relay it again, just your origin story. How did you get into the industry? Because you got in really, really kind of young, right?
Yeah, really young. I stumbled across a data entry clerk position at TransUnion Credit when I was 16. And that was because I paid the most per hour. It's better than flipping burgers or working at what was then Gemco, which is like a Target type place, which I did that too. So I found an entry-level clerk position inputting derogatory trade lines on the mortgage factual report.
Fun. Okay. And then when did the transition into something more happen?
When I found out that the person ordering the reports made more money than me, and that person worked at a mortgage company. So it was really just climbing the rung, the rung of the ladder and looking upwards to see what type of positions that I resonated with that made more money per hour than I was making when I was 16. But honestly, stumbled around. I was young. I was a junior in high school. And by the time I was 19, I did walk onto a college campus and I quickly walked off. And I was already kind of just in debt enough that I was like, I can't even go to college if I wanted to because I still have to work. So at 19, I stumbled across a broker shop called Pacific Hills Mortgage in Orange County. And that gentleman said, well, here's a box of cards. Go ask realtors for loans. So that was the beginning journey of my sales career.
When did you realize that it actually could become a career?
Oh my gosh. It was so funny because one of the top producers at that broker shop works with me at NAF still. He's still a top producer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's funny. He's probably about 8 years older than me. I know that because I just ran into him the other day. We were discussing our ages. But so I had these like 27, 28-year-old, mostly men, one gal working there, making really good money. So right then I had that vision and that mirror for me to be able to see what the future looked like. I don't think at 19 I got taken very seriously by realtors. I don't know that a realtor would trust their livelihood to a kid. Right. But I definitely stayed on point. And eventually a couple of years later, after stumbling around, a gentleman gave me a turn down loan. Well, shoot, kid, if you can do this loan, you'll get all my business. So that was when, you got a paper file, and I went right in my car, And I went to the broker shop and I'm like, hey, John, the owner of the broker shop, can we do this loan? We ended up being able to do it, restructuring it. I did come from an operations background, so I was pretty good on not just selling loans, but actually how to manufacture them. So that was my first kind of realtor that gave me a try. And, as I matured in the business and I was taken much more seriously, I began to gain traction, but I was by no means a top producer. I still kind of went back and forth as the market changes from being a loan processor to a loan originator. When the market was tough, I went back and got a processing job. And when the market was good and loans were falling out of the sky, I was young and ambitious and went out and tried to get loans. So I kind of went back and forth between two roles.
Okay. So I've heard you speak on this before, but your greatest accomplishment, or one of your greatest accomplishments, it's not the awards or the growth necessarily. It's the awareness that you bring to the needs of the underserved communities. And I'm curious, as we're talking about your career trajectory and your growth, where in your journey did that become a core area of focus? Because I'm sure obviously it was always there, but there's that old adage that you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others, like you're talking about. You navigate to survive in the industry. So this area of focus, this passion of yours for the underserved communities, where did that come about in this journey?
So it actually came about because the market turned, right? So I was, going at my office when I started to really get some traction. I went and got an early position at Countrywide in a branch in Fountain Valley, California. And I started out as a loan specialist. It was well below my knowledge level, but I knew that it was a platform that I could achieve success in. Within a year, I was the branch manager. I outproduced pretty much everybody in the branch. Right around then, the market decided to shift just like it does, right? All of a sudden the faucet's on and just goes off, and then volume drops 50%, like a matter of 24, 48 hours. Fountain Valley borders a town in California, Santa Ana. It's primarily Latino. And I kind of noticed that those realtors were still busy. And so I thought to myself, I was about 25 years old. I had a baby, one on the way. And I decided, I speak pretty good Spanish. I love my culture. And so I started going to those real estate offices and started to ask for loans. And what they were impressed was here's this girl that didn't look Latina, but I was Latina. And that I actually very much knew that how they saved money, how they spent money. I was just really culturally in tune with them. They were impressed that I had such a knowledge of manufacturing the loan. I knew how to process it, underwrite it, fund it. So that traction took off. Like literally, I was starting to get a lot of business out of Santa Ana real estate offices. And Angelo Muzzillo, legend in our industry, but he noticed that our branch's volume was higher. It was a down market than most branches in the purchase volume. So he came down and asked what I was doing. And I said, listen, I just started going after Latino business in Santa Ana. And long story short, a lot of people don't know this, and Angela actually had Countrywide was a top lender to Latino, the Latino market for a really long time. But it was really honestly, the business case to doing that business was primarily what it was. But then the second I started to do it, I'm like, oh, these are my people. Like I loved it so much. And, the desire for home ownership is just so on another level in that community. So I just found a passion and became very passionate about the obstacles to home ownership for this community. And it very much is the same, the way that they save their money, the way they work, the way they pool their money together. So it's all the gift down payment issues that still are around today were around in the early 90s. But yeah, it was a business case to doing business in the community. Then I'm like, oh my God, these are my people. I love it.
Right. Well, and so NAF, that's expanded into, I don't know, initiatives or programs. But there's NAF, I think it's Black Impact and NAF Heroes and NAF Pride. Building that infrastructure out and making it a successful, the only term I have for it really that I can think of it is an initiative or a program. Yeah. Making that successful. I'm curious to know what, both internally and externally, what struggles did you face, and how much did they vary, I guess, from community to community, if that makes sense?
So yeah, you actually said the word. We call them communities. We all want to belong. We just all do. We all want to be with our people. We all, whether you're a man, you like to be with guys, or whether you're a woman, you want to be around other women. I found that communities that were passionate about different things became better and bolder and bigger when we were pulling them together. So we actually call them NAF communities. And it's just really where people were speaking the same language, our desires are the same, and our passions are the same. And we just want to deliver product to a certain communities or talk about certain aspects of our community that maybe we're winning in or struggling in. I think the biggest obstacle has been regulation and the philosophies around DEI the last few years. That's it was a big struggle, especially when the current administration took place. It was just scratching DEI. And I've always said it, NAF, and I say it internally, not externally. I've never had a policy procedure around what I do, right? It's not like there's anything in writing at NAF that says this is what we're going to do, and this is a policy and procedure, or this is anything internal. I'm a people person. I love being Latina. I'm like, that's my passion. So I initially started Latino Focus because of me. And then when you have a Latina leader and a woman leader in a male dominated industry, I am diverse. I am whatever DEI, but I always said this wasn't a government initiative for NAF. This was a purposeful community building initiative where people who had the same aspirations and the same passion to deliver to different communities were able to come together. So the biggest struggle has been the narrative that the country has put around the importance of these communities within organizations and externally to serve the country, which is primarily diverse. We all come from different backgrounds. So, right. Yeah, that's been the biggest struggle.
Okay. Well, and but still, the homeownership gap between white Americans and Black and Hispanic Americans is still quite vast, and you've been doing this for decades at this point. So, what do you see that's actually moved the needle? And I think you already kind of touched on this in your previous answer, but what frustrates you is holding us back?
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand that one of the biggest bipartisan wins came around the housing proposal that was brought up by Senator Scott and Elizabeth Warren. I mean, that was the first time in about a decade that parties have come together to push an initiative. Now let's see if, we can get it through to the president. But I see that as a huge win. So I still see that much more people, no matter what background, no matter what party they belong to, still believe in the fact fundamentally that housing is a critical need and an underserved need. There's lack of housing for our population growth and the desire to own a home. So I don't think, I find that very exciting. And I think it's a big story to tell when, the parties come together, we can do great things. Obstacles still, we can get this Housing Act passed. I'm hoping that, building won't become so cumbersome and so unaffordable for different factors of the country. I sit on the board of Century Communities. They are I think top 5 home builder in the country. I've been on their board for about 5 years. So I learn a lot about the home building industry and the issues they have there, especially spanning across the country and different issues around building in certain cities, towns. So I really, hoping that affordability comes in, repurposing comes in. We have a lot of buildings that aren't being used anymore for in-office work. We can repurpose. So I'm actually excited for the future, especially if we can get this signed by the president, then we can really move as an industry to, take initiative. As far as lending goes, we still have access. We still have obstacles, especially now with gig workers and a lot of, minority home buyers wanting to get in. I think last year, though, the Hispanic home buyer percentage did go up. I saw Gary Acosta announce that, really being excited a couple months ago. So we are making moves, but the barriers to entry still exist. And I think that there's a lot of sustainable lending that to be done. And we just need this support of maybe, the non-QM has helped, except for the down payment requirements generally are just a little out of line. But I think Fannie, Freddie, and our government programs still serve a big need around this type of lending. And I think the regulatory environment's lightened up maybe too much. but of course makes that type of lending a little easier for other people to do.
Right. Let me ask you this, because the from all the conversations that I've had, and from my analysis of the market and our problems, that if we have more homes, first inventory, everything goes back to inventory, and that in and of itself is like it's so complicated, a myriad of things that are holding us back. Do you land more on the side of, it really is a local problem first with zoning, and there's like the new urbanist greenfield movement where you can repurpose the buildings, but then that goes and that's a tax issue that still is a zoning issue? Or do you land more on the federal side, where it's a federal regulation issue or federal policy issue? I mean, I know it's obviously both, but which side do you lean to?
Oh, I think it's a local problem. I mean, Rick and I have been trying to build a house in Corona del Mar, California. We're on our 9th year. I mean,
that's why I'm not laughing at you, but that's
between the city and the Coastal Commission, 9 years. I just built a house in Mexico and it took less than 2 years. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is definitely local policy, state policy. I mean, that's really the problem. Federally, we can come out federally, but then you have every single state and their philosophies and their ways of not doing good business. That's really preventing us from growing.
Well, let me ask you. I want to talk to you about your operating position and your leadership philosophy. I know that you got your team kind of operate under a people over profits type philosophy, and again, that's one of those things where you walk the walk, but it's easy to walk the walk when times are good. The past couple of years, margin pressures can change people without a real conviction for that. So. I'm curious to know, what does it cost you, or what has it cost you or NAF to really hold that line over the last couple of years when things have been, rough?
I don't think it's actually every single time we go to the table to really get rid of a cancer in the organizations, really somebody's not aligned or, just it's not moving us forward. Years ago, Christy and I would sit and think about the impact and be scared. But I will tell you, it's 100% of the time, 100%, every time we've made a decision to part ways with volume, meaning that somebody driving the volume, originating the volume, 100% of the time has been for the betterment of the culture. 100%. We sit around and we talk about the memories we had and whether these particular people in the organization, how miserable they made us, and other people, and whether, it was a $2 billion region, we had to part ways with the leader, or a, $50, $80 million producer that just was not aligned with our philosophies. Every single time we come out ahead. So there isn't a time. Now, does it mean that we're the biggest? No. Or the best? Probably. I always say we're not the biggest, but we're the best. But I mean, Rick and I have been, the last 4 years have been pitched so many different companies to acquire. And fundamentally, it's really, the risk is in keeping the company together, right? And it's so few companies have our philosophy around people first. I mean, really, it's just profit, profit, profit. Well, the stability in the longevity of our platform has been because the people stay. Our true team stays. I mean, Christy's been with us since she was an underwriter. Our COO was I think an LOA or a processor. I mean, we really have raised our leadership team with us. So yeah, absolutely. Always listen. We have a philosophy. You can be an asshole for a day, just not an asshole. It's too much, and life is too short.
Well, there is one, for sure, one best list that you're on. It's repeatedly, you guys are on one of the best workplace lists.
Yeah, many. Fortune covers us. Inc. Magazine's mentioned it. We have for women, for advancement of diversity, for millennials. I mean, we have a very advanced platform where, people are like, are you getting into AI? I'm like, getting into AI. If it's not touching every single department at this point, you have a problem. It's moving so fast. So I don't think the industry knows us as advanced as we are. We just don't really, we're an internal communicator, not an extrovert. Like Rick is very, very introverted in an odd way. He's very much doesn't come out and talk to the industry, but the guy is like brilliant. I mean, I'm married to him, but he's quite honestly one of the most brilliant mortgage minds I've ever met. And I've been at the table with many of them.
Well, so maintaining that culture, so much so that again, your NAF is repeatedly on this best workplace list. You've got thousands of employees, all the way down to the LOs. You've got hundreds of locations. How do you maintain that consistency of culture to where it's, like I said, it permeates everything?
Yeah, it's really, I'm kind of coined. Everybody's like, what's Patty's role now? Well, I was the operator. I was the underwriter at NAF. I was a processor at NAF. I'm 61 now, and I've been in the mortgage business for 44 years. So what brings me joy is the people part of this business. It brings me joy and heartache at the very same time. I've controlled the emotional part of what I do in this industry, but I treat every single person I come across with as an asset, no matter what position they have. They choose to work at NAF. This industry's pulled on recruiting, right? Leave NAF, we're better. So my narrative needs to be strong. My cell phone number is accessible to every single team member at NAF, 5,700 team members. You can get my cell number. You can text me. I'm very open on the fact that I think we are a better company when I hear from you. Your advice, your knowledge is key to our growth. I'll give you an example. Rick loves telling this story. We had somebody in post-closing, right? Post-closing department. I don't know, maybe 15, 20 people in that department. This person took it upon himself to create AI tech that streamlined the way post-closing was done and presented it to Rick. This is a kid. And he was able to speak up and present it to Rick and completely redo how we do post-closing. If you don't have an organization where people can speak up to the very top, you're losing out on a lot of very, very positive growth and positive information, because it doesn't come externally. We're not stealing it from other companies. It actually comes from homegrown knowledge, people who know how we work, how easy it is for us to move around and pivot. This was a kid. I mean, it's like right. He told Rick, and this in the last 2 months has completely changed the way we do post-closing. So if you can't have your team members speak to the top of the house, you have an issue. We are not in a white ivory tower. It is not easy being a CEO and a founder. I share the journey that it may look really sexy and really fun. It must be so great every day. I have the same problems as every single living human being on the planet. I deal with adversity. I deal with heartache. I deal with kids going the wrong way and pulling them back. I deal with all the same things. So I share the commonality of where I sit versus like a receptionist. We're in the same journey.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of this interview. On Thursday, we'll be back with part 2.